This scrap wood tabletop decoupage decor piece, we're going to need a piece of scrap wood. This is 2 by 6 inches and it's roughly about 8 inches in length. And then pick your paper that you would like to decoupage on. Here I'm going to be using this TDS A4 in size rice paper along with a little wood applique. Now I want everything to blend really well, so I'm going to give it a coat of white paint. Feel free to use whatever paint you would like. This is just what I had on hand and I know this works really well. I applied 2 coats to this whole piece of scrap wood and allowed it to dry. I also applied a nice coat of the same color to our little wood applique. And one little tip, if you go to use these, I have found that if you give them a little spritzy spritz of water, it really helps move your paint around and get in all those little grooves. Once your piece is dry, now it's time to decoupage. I'm going to be using some Mod Podge in the mat for our medium. Feel free to use whatever medium you would like. And I'm going to be using one of my TDS artist brushes in the fan style. These are perfect for decoupage and they're super easy to use. I'm applying a decent coat all over the whole piece. And then I'm just going to take that rice paper and give it a little spritz of water on the back section that I'm going to be attaching with the Mod Podge. Just helps me to be able to get them wrinkles out and smooth it out. Don't recommend doing this with a napkin, okay? Don't go spritzing a napkin with some water. That's a bad idea. I have confidence in this rice paper. I've been working with it for quite some time, and I know that a little bit of water on it is not going to damage it, and it's going to help with the application. As well as you see here, I'm just using my fingers. Do that a lot with this stuff. It is a little bit more durable than my tissue paper. While the tissue paper is pretty durable as well, the rice paper is slightly thicker and it's fibrous. Taking a dry kitchen sponge here, it is not wet, and just pressing it down, that helps reduce wrinkles. You certainly can grab a piece of cling wrap and also rub it all over your piece, reducing wrinkles. Take this idea and remix it using whatever you would like to decoupage onto your scrap wood. Once you have everything applied on here and it has dry, take your sander and get that excess off. I'm using some of my Type On Quick and Thick to attach my wood applique, and then I am going to grab some of my Dixie Belle Silver Gilding Wax and apply a nice little coat around the edges of this wood piece, as well as to the top of our applique, really making those designs pop. We're going to be using this beautiful gem to create a riser with one of Dollar Tree's large glass plates. Now this is going to be a little tricky because I just have one napkin of this design. It's fine, I know. We're going to make it work, okay? And I'm going to show you some tips and tricks. So if you run into this problem as well, you can make it work at home too. We're going to start off by removing the back of those sneaky layers from the top layer. We're going to need just the top layer to decoupage onto our plates. Then pick your medium. I've been in love with this stuff recently. I get it from Amazon for anyone interested. And for application purposes, I'm going to be using my good old TDS artist brushes in the fan style. These are items that work for me. Feel free to use whatever works best for you. We're going to take a little bit of water on a smaller paintbrush and just trim down our napkin. Now, Dollar Tree also has the smaller glass plates, which if I had one of those, it would have fit perfectly in the size of this napkin. So do keep that in mind. A lot of this project is just sharing the idea of how you can use one napkin for a larger piece and break it down. So at home, if you just happen to find that one gem or run across that one beautiful napkin or purchase that one beautiful napkin and that's all you got, People, I got your back. This is going to help you be able to utilize every section of that. Since we're not going to have enough of this napkin to do the entire back of our plate, we're going to just frame the edge. This medium dries fairly quick, but it's not stressing me out enough that I don't have the ability to do a decent section. So I am taking a little bit of that medium. I am not over polying it because glass is not porous. It's not going to absorb. It's going to sit right on the top there. So I'm running into there possibly being a problem for creating a ton of wrinkles. So make sure your medium is minimal. Now, one of my tips and tricks that I love to use is a dry kitchen sponge. This is not wet, my friends. You don't have to ask in the comments. It is dry. It's just a kitchen sponge I pick up from Walmart. I cut it in half. You simply place the napkin exactly where you want and then just press the sponge down into place. It's absorbing that excess medium as well and catching it in the sponge. And I get asked this all the time. Brandy, what do you do with the sponge when it's all hard and stiff? Well, focus, people. We're talking about crafting in a sponge. Okay, anyhow, when it gets like this, I just chop it up with a pair of scissors into different sections, put it to the side, and use it for painting. I like to save every penny that I can, and this helps me have more things to get crafty with. I was able to utilize 2 large sections of the napkin, so I only had to really piece together one small area. You will notice that I'm being very purposeful where I'm putting the fan brush. That's another reason I love these things, because they're super thin at the tip. So if you got to get in real close and precise in a section, it allows you to do just that. So around where the center is, I was able to create a pretty straight line all the way around this clear glass plate. And the napkin is only sticking to the sections where I applied the medium. I set this off to dry for about 3 hours because our next step is going to require us to put a layer of medium all over the area that we applied the napkin to. I want to paint the complete back of this plate, and in order to do that and not worry about the paint seeping through the napkin, this is going to give us a protective sealant over top the decoupage part. One of the reasons I love this medium is because it's also indoor-outdoor use. So me being able to do this next part saves me a lot of grief. I am just taking my water bottle and spritzing the whole top area of that napkin where it is not attached and using my finger to pull off the excess. This is going to give me a really nice clean line around the entire piece, so I don't have a bunch of frayed bits of that napkin. When I was all done, I just grabbed a paper towel and went around drying everything before I applied my layer of paint. An amazing tip to keep in mind whenever you're painting over something that is decoupage and attached to glass is to make sure that that paint is glass friendly. You will have a much better cohesive bond with everything. So please keep that in mind. I know that this stuff works really well, and a lot of people ask me where I get it from. I get it from Walmart. You can also order it off of Amazon, but my local Walmart still carry this paint. I know so many of you say that yours don't anymore, and I'm sorry about that. Now there's going to be mixed opinions on this part, and I'm completely okay with that. I'm going to take this round wood piece and glue it to the back of the plates because we're going to put some feet on here for our riser. And I'm just going to be using these little joints. They're from Dollar Tree. They're actually the little snowmen. I hold them all year long because they make perfect riser feet. I'm going to be using some tacky glue. Now in the event that you're asking yourself, Brandy, why are you doing all this? I just feel like this sticks better to glass than me just popping some little riser feet on the glass that's on paints. Just kind of makes everything a little bit sturdier. So I'm just going to glue this down with some tacky glue, allow this to dry overnight, and then we're going to put a coat of paint over top everything so it matches. Once your piece is all dry, you're welcome to put a sealer on the bottom of this and cover everything to protect it if you would like. Now, how do I get the napkin off around the edge? I just squirt it with some water and then pluck it all off. I love this idea because it allows us to take something we usually just display in our home and put to a practical use. And since we didn't put any sealers or decoupage or paint or anything like that on the top part, it is really easy to clean that glass off and use all year long. In Dollar Tree's Crafter Squares section, they have these awesome wood planks that are perfect for tabletop decor. We're going to use this beautiful napkin as the main focal point for this piece. We're going to get started by applying a nice coat of this chalk paint to everything. I often get asked, Brandy, why are you spraying water on your pieces? There's a couple reasons, but one of the largest reasons behind it is it helps to move the product around and it helps me use less product. I'm always looking for ways to pinch pennies and be budget friendly with things. And I've noticed that spraying water just a little bit, especially with chalk paint, it really helps make things last and go a little bit further. This is one of Dollar Tree's little glass candle holders. We're going to be using that as our base. Next up, we need to get rid of those sneaky layers on the back of our napkin. So I'm just tearing a corner. This is the easiest way for me to do it. You guys go about this whatever works best for you. We're going to need just the top decorative layer. We're going to be doing the iron-on method. We're going to be using this Faux art indoor-outdoor medium. And with this stuff, it's not as thick as Mod Podge. So whenever I do the iron-on method, luckily this dries quickly because we need about 3 layers for good coverage to be able to do the iron-on method. I've tried using this stuff and just doing one, and it does not work as well. Now that our piece is all dry, it is time to bring on in the iron. Feel free to use whatever iron you would like for this. I keep this little sucker right next to me by my craft station, and I like to turn mine all the way up. Grab yourself a piece of parchment paper and then place your napkin down exactly where you want to iron it. Put the parchment paper right over top of that, and I like to work my iron from one edge to the other instead of starting in the center and then working my way out. This just works best for me. Use whatever technique works best for you. I would definitely spend a minute or more ironing on your piece, and that really also depends on the size. But before I move on, I always check around the edges to make sure everything is sealed properly to the edge. Then it's always time to bring on in the little sander. Well, maybe not always time, but the majority of the time we bring on in the little finger sander and do downward strokes to separate our napkin. This will help decrease the opportunity for bunching at the ends instead of sanding side to side. Next up, we're going to bring in some TDS dry rub on transfers and cut out a little section of the script part to cover in where we had to leave an empty space with our napkin so we didn't have that double print in there. Since our napkin already had some script in there, I felt this would be a perfect overlay to really blend on in. Now, people beware, I did not seal over this. You should, okay? You should. My skill set, I got faith in my decoupage and my transfers here. So I knew that this was going to be fine. But if you want to make sure yours is going to be fine, pop a layer of sealer over anything you decoupage before you put a transfer on it, just to be safe. I put a layer of sealer over this after everything was done. Absolutely love how this came together. Popped a little bit of moss in there since we had some birds. Let me know how you think this one turned out. If you're looking for a really cool idea to transform 2x4s this holiday season, look no further, people. We're actually going to make a set. So we're going to take this one piece and cut it on down into 2. You can make as many pieces with your 2x4s as you would like. And then we're going to grab a piece of TDS Creative's A4 rice paper to decoupage onto the top of these pieces. I felt like this would serve as a perfect decorative choice for our little tabletop ornament holders that we're making here. So when I was done, I grabbed some of my Folk Art Outdoor door varnish to use as our medium, and one of my TDS Creative artist brushes. This is in the fan style. I applied a nice little layer to the top and side, just two sides, of our wood piece here. I'm taking my water bottle and giving the back of the rice paper a little spritzy spritz, and then I'm going to just lay it on down and press it with my finger. You can use whatever you would like to apply yours. My paper usually sticks fairly easy with just a little bit of pressure, and then I allow it to dry naturally. Once the pieces were dry, it was time to bring on in the finger sander or sandpaper, whatever you want to use. This is what I use. And get rid of all the excess. When you're done that, then it's time to bring on in our drill. Now, we're gonna need a hefty size drill bit because we're gonna be shoving stuff down inside of our piece, our little hole that we're drilling here. So I'm using this to put the hole in to create the ornament stand that we're going to have popping out of the center of our piece. And to find our center, I'm just taking a little card here and just putting it in the corners and then marking the middle. Look at me measuring. Make sure you take a picture because it don't happen often. And people, make sure you don't go all the way through, okay? We're going like midway through or mostly through, not all the way through the whole piece. Now here I decided that I wanted to make this look like it's really part of the wood. And to do that, I'm sanding around all the edges of the rice paper where I decoupage this. This technique requires a high grit sandpaper. This is a 240 grit. Do not go at this with an 80, okay? And it's just carving around the edges. And if your decoupage is on here really well, you want to make sure it's completely dry. I would not recommend heat gunning this and then trying this technique. Allow it to dry naturally and then do this the next day. This way there's been some actual cure between the paper and the wood. And as you go along, you can see it really looks like that design is etched into the wood. Now I wanted to really tie this together. So we're gonna take some Mod Podge, Antique Waverly Wax, and a little bit of water and mix them together. This is gonna also give us a seal over top of everything. It's going to blend the wood together into the paper. It's going to tint the paper just a little bit. And this is another reason why it's important to make sure that your decoupage is adequately dry, because you're going to be wetting it with this watered mixture. Okay. When it dries, it should be perfectly flat. You won't have a bunch of wrinkles as long as your initial decoupage application was done right. And I know right is in the eye of the beholder, because if you want wrinkles, then don't worry about it, my friend. Don't worry about it. To create the hanging mechanism, I'm just going to take some of this gauge wire I usually have off to the side. You can get this stuff off Amazon. There's a bunch of different options and it's really easy to manipulate. I'll take my wire cutters and trim it down to size and then use a pair of needle nose pliers to kind of bend the edge that you want to shove down into the hole and then curve the upside. I do these a lot when I'm making little photo stand holders, but I'll create like a wonky circle. And for this, I just created a wonky looking hanger piece. I went into my vintage ornaments and found two cute little pieces to pop on here and think this is such a creative way to transform 2x4s and add them into your decor around the holidays. I was sent this awesome wood coaster set from my good friend Tracy's Crafty Creations. We're going to be decoupaging this using just one napkin. Now, for anyone interested, I did want to share that this set came from Hobby Lobby. And to start off, we're going to be using some dishwasher safe Mod Podge. Now, people, I'm telling on myself right here, but take note to how many coasters you see me putting out and then how many I finished with, okay? I'm nothing around here if not transparent. We're going to take some of this dishwasher safe Mod Podge and put a nice thick juicy layer on all of our coasters and allow this to dry for anywhere between 3 and 4 hours. Now, depending on how thick your coat is, you might have to wait a little bit longer. And I know some of y'all have no patience. and want to bust out that heat gun, but I really feel like the overall application and the finished product just turns out better if you let it happen naturally. Now let me tell y'all what happened, because I know you see me just putting the 5 coasters on this napkin. So I didn't realize until I put these all in here that there was a gap. And I remember when I took these out that there wasn't a gap. And as these were drying, I set them all in front of me right here. Or so I thought. I mean, as crafters do, we kind of put stuff places and somehow it ends up over there and we completely forget it even exists. And that's what happened. And for anyone thinking that the coasters, I could have just added it in right there, they were already finished. I had them turned around so you couldn't see. Now, I'm showing you this because these are my favorite napkin brands currently. For anyone interested in what of all the napkin brands I've used, this Michael Designs, they're my absolute favorite for now, okay? And before I get spammed in the comments, like where did I get the napkins and this and that, most of these are sent to me from subscribers. I don't know where they came from. Once I removed the sneaky layers from the napkin, it was time to bring on in our iron. Now, you can use any iron for this. I just keep this little joint next to my craft station and I turn it all the way up. While that's cooling off, I grabbed a piece of parchment paper, not wax paper, parchment paper. And I get asked often, doesn't matter shiny side, downside. People, I iron with whatever side. I don't discriminate on shiny or matte. Like, we just place it on there and pray it all works out. It usually does. I haven't did this a time where I felt, oh, I should have used the shiny side. It usually just it works. A good tip to remember if you're doing multiple items underneath one napkin is to start that iron on method with the sections where the pieces are attaching to one another, so you get that melted bond going on underneath of there, and then go back and do your individual iron section. I took about a minute ironing each piece individually, and then I took my scissors and just cut everything down that wasn't attached and gingerly pulled the rest of the sections off. Then it was time to bring on in the finger sander and give these a nice little sanding. A good tip whenever you're sanding decoupage is instead of going side to side, go up and down. This will give you a nice clean break. In the event if something didn't attach on the ends, you don't have to worry about any bunching or fraying. If you wanted to paint these, you could absolutely do that, but I feel like certain napkins just look amazing on natural wood. These turned out so good. We're going to just take some of this and apply a nice thin layer. This stuff is indoor-outdoor and it's non-toxic, and I really love how it is not sticky, or you can see like an overlay of it once it's completely dry. And in case anyone's wondering what that looks like, this is the dishwasher safe Mod Podge, and you can usually see that shine and some streaks. But I do love that stuff as well, so keep that in mind. I don't really have a favorite over these two so far. They're working out for me. It just depends on what finish I'm going for, and that's what one I go with. This is my first time seeing these larger craft wood pieces at Dollar Tree. I picked up 2 of them because I feel like they're the perfect size for this palette shelf I want to build. However, people, they are really rough around the edges. I took my little sander and just knocked all the stuff off around the top and the edges. We want it nice and smooth because we're going to be decoupaging this beautiful napkin onto the top of both of these pieces. They're going to be our actual shelf pieces. So that's what we're going to see is the design of this beautiful napkin. Plus, I love how this napkin has just like a whole kind of different design going on throughout the whole thing. There's lots of use here. If you've never decoupaged a napkin before, a good tip is to always remember to remove the sneaky layers off the bottom. You're just going to want to use the top decorative layer on your decoupage. I like to just tear a corner. Most of the time it shows me those sneaky layers. It's quick and I just pull the whole piece completely apart. And this is not the only way to do this. There are several different ways. This is just what works best for me. I decided to cut the napkin in half so I had equal portions to use our Mod Podge to decoupage onto the pieces of wood. And real quick, I want to share with y'all something to help you maybe save some money. I go through these all the time. And if you go into the stores, sometimes they're pretty expensive. However, if you have a Ross local to you, I don't know if you know, but they have craft sections and you can get sets like this pretty inexpensively. I want to do the iron-on method to these boards, and people, one thing that grosses me out while I'm crafting is Mod Podge boogers. Ew. Ew. What is come on. Hey. Ew. Get out. Oh. It won't come out. I can't even stand it. I started gagging trying to edit that. That was all I could do. I'm sorry. The editing could have been better there, but that was all I had. I can't rewatch that section. You're going to want to take your Mod Podge without the boogers and make sure there is a nice, healthy layer all over the top of your boards, especially whenever you're going to do the iron-on method. You want to make sure that when you're all done putting your layer on, it's heavy and thick all over the piece. The worst part about this is it normally takes a couple hours for it to completely dry, and I like to allow mine to dry at room temperature. But while that's drying, it's always good to make the most of our time, so I grabbed the little wood pallets and my little spritzer bottle and gave them a couple little squirts, and then took some black chalk paint and applied a layer. You'll notice that I left one piece of the palette completely unpainted, and that's because we're gonna cut that sucker off using our miter shears. And people, honestly, cut it off with whatever works best for you. I just keep these right next to me, and I know that I can get up pretty close to the pallets. We only need the first 3 of each palette so we can put on the side of our shelf that we're creating. When I was done trimming them down, I took a little bit of that black paint and went over anything that needed some touch-ups. While they're drying, it is time to bring on in the iron so we can iron on our beautiful napkin to these pieces that are finally dry. Once you have your napkin in the exact spot that you want it, grab you some parchment paper so you can apply over top of the napkin while you're doing your iron on. This is going to protect the napkin and protect your iron all at the same time and allow you to get a nice smooth finish. And then just work from one side to the next. Before you go sanding anything off, check all your edges, making sure that that napkin is butterly melted onto the Mod Podge and the top of that wood. And people, just in case you forget to check a section or whatever, it's a good idea to get in the habit of when you're sanding off stuff like this to go straight down. So this way it just disconnects your piece. If you go back and forth, it's possible it can shred it. I'm taking some of the same black paint and trimming all around the edge where the napkin is not. When everything was completely dry, I grabbed my current favorite wood glue and my hot glue and started attaching everything. Now, how you attach it is completely up to you. I decided that I wanted to start by assembling the pallets together, just so this way when I put them on the sides of our shelving unit, that they were kind of already together with a slight hold. So I could reinforce with more wood glue and more hot glue as I assembled everything together at one time. If you want, and I showed you right here, you can add a little bit more wood glue and hot glue and put a tumbling block at the bottom just for a little bit of extra reinforcement. And feel free, people, I know I didn't paint the underside. Make sure you paint yours if you want to. For the sake of time, I did not. After I was able to get the two shelves in place on the pallets, I then took the other pallet that I put together, the other little set, and put all the glue in the sections I wanted to put it on at one time. So this way I could just put that on the other side at one time instead of trying to do piece by piece. You have 2x4s laying around, you can always cut them down into whatever size and transform them into amazing little shelf sitters. We're going to take this piece and first start off by covering up the numbers on the back. Use whatever idea you would like for this. I'm just going to take some black chalk paint and put a nice coat over the back of our piece. I'm using a little bit of water here just to spread out our paint quickly, and also so I don't use a whole lot of paint. And it literally took me about a minute to smear this everywhere. Once the piece is dry, and you could paint it the whole thing if you want around the sides. I did not want to. I wanted to keep this neutral on the sides. That black definitely had those numbers blend in. And for the sides, I'm going to use the same method, just using my antique Waverly wax. I'm going to spray some water around the edges here and take my sponge and smear it on out. You can use a baby wipe for this or a paintbrush, whatever works best for you. But I will tell you that if you're like me and you like to keep your wood rustic and not sand down everything, when you have ends like this that are really, really, really rustic, if you saturate them with a lot of water and you take either a sponge or a pouncer like this, a little circular sponge, and just tappity tap, tap, tap that paint in there, it absorbs really, really quickly and makes spreading out your paint or your Waverly wax super simple. For the decoupage portion, we're going to be using my TDS Creative Decoupage tissue paper, and this is called Small Scrap Mashups. This is all I have left of the piece that I had. I'm going to use this little section right here and just trim that one out so it fits right over top of our 2x4 that we didn't paint the little section on. I left this one completely neutral in that spot. For our medium, I'm going to be using my Faux outdoor matte varnish. Feel free to use whatever you like. And for the application, I'm going to be using one of my TDS artist brushes. This is in the fan style. Use whatever mediums, whatever tissue papers. You could use newspaper and get a very similar style. Again, completely up to you. I'm just taking this idea and sharing it, and you remix it with what works best for your home and your decor. When the medium was all spread out on our piece, I grabbed my little water bottle and gave a couple spritzy spritz on the back of the tissue paper. Now you can skip this part if you want. The tissue paper will absolutely apply dry. Okay, this is just technique that I like to use. By all means, leave yours dry if you want. It will still work out just fine. Or do the iron-on method. Completely up to you. This is just how I decided to go about it. There's so many different techniques you can use. Now, I do make sure that before I carry on that all the sides are sealed really well, and I just check by pulling up the paper, make sure you got a nice connection. Once I'm happy with that, I bring on in the little finger sander and give our piece a sand around the edges, disconnecting the tissue paper that has the excess all around the edges. And I do that in a downward motion. Next, I'm going to bring in my TDS Creative stencil set, and this is called Provincial Garden with Geometrics. Use whatever stencil you would like for this idea. Really want it to take this piece and trim it down to fit over top of our tissue paper. Now, you can use paint for this part, but I decided we're going to use some texture paste, and I'm out of my texture paste, so we're going to mix up a quick little batch here using some calcium carbonate, some baking soda, okay, and you can see I did I didn't really measure. People, I keep telling y'all I don't measure really. It's with love, okay? And then I'm just taking some Elmer's glue. I'm giving us some plops, plop us some glue on in here. And then I mixy until I am happy with the consistency. And that's really it. Baking soda, calcium carbonate, glue, okay? This stuff will last for about 3 to 5 days in a container. And for me, I will go through this in about 3 to 5 days when I'm filming and making projects. And these stencils are reusable. You can wash them and you can put painter's tape on them and peel them off and still use the sections that you covered up. I love these things. Super, super user friendly. Even if you're a beginner and you're not great at stencils, they do make it easy for you to be able to use them. Just trimmed off the sections I didn't want, and then applied a layer of our texture paste. And look how pretty this turned out. I felt like our piece needed a little bit of jewelry, so I grabbed one of these old vintage handles I had in my stash and grabbed some of my favorite Gorilla Glue gel and applied on the ends here. Now, a lot of handles, you can, they have holes in them so you can drill through. That would have been great, but this one didn't. They were covered up, so I knew that this glue would get the job done. Really love how this piece turned out. If you have these laying around your house and you're not really sure what to do with them, try turning them into a little photo stand holder by putting them on top of each other just like this. Now we're going to decoupage around the edges. If I'm being 100, I didn't have the smaller size blocks, so I took myself to Home Depot and I grabbed the smaller one. I did have the larger one in my stash, but while I was there, I also may have grabbed more than I really needed. We won't talk about that. Moving on, for our rice paper, we're going to be using my TDS Creative Rice Paper print, and we're going to cut off a little section right up at the top. I really thought that this part would match the natural color of the wood and decided to trim it down as precise as possible. Now, if you wanted to leave it whole and then completely sand off all the sections at the end, that's completely up to you. There's a multitude of different ways you can go about tackling this. For me, I just wanted to trim it as close as I could to the edges so I didn't have a ton of sanding in the ends. For our medium, I decided to go with some good old Mod Podge. Feel free to use whatever medium you would like for your project. This is just what I decided to go with. And I'm going to be using my TDS Creative Artist Brush in the fan style for our application. Just went around the edges and I did 2 at a time and wet the back of our rice paper just a little bit. You could absolutely leave the rice paper dry if you would like. It's completely up to you. And I gingerly pressed our strips around the edges of our little wood blocks here. And then I continued to do the same application process for the larger block and allowed these to dry. I did notice that there was still a little bit of overhang with the rice paper and decided to bring on in the finger sander and give them a nice little shave down so the rice paper was completely flush with the end of the wood around the edges. To attach the pieces, I'm going to use Type-On Quick and Thick and some hot glue. Now I just kind of spread the Quick and Thick out over the majority of the wood, since that's going to give us our long hold, and then kept just a tiny little space open where I could get that hot glue in there so we could get an immediate hold to attach the pieces while that Quick and Thick dry. My big old head in the way I wanted to make sure it was like exactly centered. I did pretty good. When the piece was dry, I grabbed my Folk Art varnish and it gave the piece a nice coat. This way it was completely sealed and everything looked really nice and cohesive and melted together. I did have to allow this to dry before bringing on in our drill with our drill bit. Now, I recommend using a decent sized drill bit for this next part, depending on what you're going to put in there for your photo stand. So you can see mine's pretty thick and chunky. I'm going to be taking some metal gauge wire in here and I wanted the space. So I took a minute and drilled. Now, mind you, be careful doing this, okay? Because your piece is going to move. If you want to clamp it down, you go right ahead. But once the hole was in there, I then grabbed some wire cutters and I grabbed some needle nose pliers along with our wire. Now, I get this off of Amazon. Okay, it's just manipulable gauge wire. You can, whatever you would like, use what you could use, you know, a little paper clip if you want. I take this stuff and I patiently curl it around to create the ability for us to place a photo in the top. And then when I'm happy with the circle, and it never is a perfect circle. It is literally like, it's a wonky circle. I like it, okay? I like it. And then I curve the bottom and shove that sucker in the hole. I usually do not glue anything down, but I did feel like there was a little disconnect here, so I shoved some messy moss in there to cover up the bottom of it and put a beautiful photo in here to finish our piece off. Have tiny little pieces of wood laying around in your stash like this, you know what they're perfect for? They're perfect for bases of larger projects. You can decoupage them. I'm going to just take some of my TDS Creative tissue paper, trim a little section out, and wrap around the top and the side of this little 1x3 cutout. And for our medium, I'm going to be using some Faux Art Outdoor Matte Varnish. I always have little teeny tiny blocks laying around in my stash like this, whether they're from Dollar Tree or they're just from larger projects, and I never knew what to do with them. But there's always a good way to put them to use for a stand, like to attach another piece onto it. They're a perfect size for that. So applying a little bit of tissue paper or rice paper or a napkin to give it a design to just help your DIY have a little extra something is a great way to transform these teeny tiny little pieces. To help the application process, I'm just taking a dry sponge and pressing down around our piece to help connect that tissue paper and the medium onto the wood. I allowed this to dry and then brought on in the finger sander and trimmed down any of the excess. Now we're gonna need to bring on in the stapler so we can take our bamboo ring that we got from Dollar Tree and attach on the top with a little bit of this Type-On Quick and Thick. And don't be afraid to bring on in your hammer and hammer those staples in if those suckers didn't go in all the way. I added a little layer of sealer over the top of this since I had to wait for that bamboo ring to dry on the top of there before carrying on. My staples aren't real long, so they don't go really far into the base. That glue I'm counting on to make sure that this don't fall apart. So I set that to the side, I let it dry, and when it was all done, I grabbed some floral pieces and some twine and started wrapping some of that twine around some floral pieces that all matched to attach to the side of our bamboo ring so we could create us a nice little tabletop decor piece. You can remix this idea in so many different ways. I love the ability to take a tiny piece of scrap wood and just use it for a base and attach another piece and get really creative with it. It's just a simple way to elevate that wood and get it out of your stash sitting around the house. I added an extra little wood flower onto our bamboo ring and a candle for decorative purposes in the center. And really love how this turned out. I love transforming candles into beautiful home decor, especially going to thrift stores when you find that cool, unique piece. But let's be real, sometimes they're gross. However, with a little bit of work, you can transform that into something beautiful to keep in your home. And people, I know what you're thinking. Brandy, why don't we just go to good old Dollar Tree, grab us something inexpensive that's new and make that? Well, I do that too. But they don't always have unique finds. Like I found these gorgeous LED joints at Goodwill on a recent trip and it was green tag day. So I got these 50% off. You know what that means? I only spent $4 on both of these. Pat myself on the back. Thought this wick was crazy. It looks like it's used, but it's not. It's just a black little plastic bit. The candles are actually in pretty decent condition. I was looking for something a little bit more messed up than these. Before the price, these were LED and the outer layer is wax, which is not always easy to find. I grabbed these suckers and I'm like, we're gonna roll with it. You can take this idea and remix it, and I'm gonna give you tons of tips and trips how you can upcycle and transform different pieces that you find at the thrift store. So if you see them, they're gross and you're like, ew, like pick them up. If you like the style of them, I got all kinds of things that are gonna help you redo these with napkins. First off, we're gonna need to grab some packing tape. And yes, it has to be that tough packing tape. You can't use painter's tape for this. Wax is a really tacky surface and it's so easy to get things like dog hair and gross stuff stuck in them. So when you find those candles at Goodwill and you're like, I don't want to pick them up because you don't even want to touch them. I've definitely grabbed some gross joints. But the packing tape, it sticks to that wax and then pulls all the gross bits off. A little tip when you get to the point where you're around the wick, even if it's a used candle, okay, and it's not this fake one, say it's a real candle, you can take a pair of scissors and clip the wick down as close as you can to the wax, and then take your tape, just like I'm doing it here, and go all around the area. This way, if you're just using the candle as a decorative item, it looks fancy. And if you're going to burn that sucker, I wouldn't even worry about clipping the wick down anyway. For the napkin, we're going to be using this beautiful dark one right here. Now, I love pieces like this for napkins because it's one continuous design. On this one, I used a white napkin, which allows that transparency to shine through, which is great if the candle you pick up is in really good condition. If you find that the candle, the wax is uneven and things like that, white napkin isn't always going to help. So a little tip is to take a piece of wax paper and your heat gun and gingerly heat up around the edges. And then you can take your hand and do a little rubbing to smooth it out. This is a great tip if you're going to be using that white background for the napkin so it evens out your surface. Now, these candles didn't really have any imperfections, but I just wanted to share with you that tip in case you run into that. People, you use a piece of parchment paper for every candle. I don't care if it's a new candle or not. I'm going to show you in just a couple minutes why that is important. Starting off, I cut down a section that fits around the amount of candle that I need and then pulled off the sneaky layers from the back of the top decorative layer. We're just going to be using that top one. Next, you're going to want to size up your candle. I personally like to cut my napkin down as close as I can to around the edges. I don't want it exact. I want a little bit of hangover, and that's because I trim mine completely down when we're all finished, and I'll share that step with you too. I trim mine down to where there's a little bit of hangover on one of the sides. I know some people are picky and they want everything to match up. If that's you, go ahead and do that. I don't really care. I turn my candles around on the back side so nobody can see it and judge me. This is a take or leave kind of step. I'm using a piece of painter's tape and I'm de-tacking it so it doesn't muck up my napkin here, and I'm just lining it up and then placing it gently down. I'm not even like pressing the painter's tape down because when I pull it up, I don't want it to tear the napkin. This is just going to hold it into place while I use my parchment paper. Now, some people like to wrap their parchment paper all the way around and tape the parchment paper. You do you. This is how I do this. I am really picky about paying attention to how the napkin is actually soaking through the wax when I do this. So I need to be able to remove that parchment paper. If that isn't something for you, this is just a mental thing for me. It's just the way I go about it. I like to remove it like I am here, making sure it's going on right. And then I also like to rub the application. And before I have people in the comments asking me why I don't use an iron for this, they see other people using an iron, it's just not my cup of tea. I've done that before and the wax will end up melting over top of the candle. It just pushes out over the napkin. It's just not my thing. You do you. When you're doing this, it's important to make sure that your napkin is kind of changing colors. I don't know how else to explain that, but you'll notice that the wax is seeping up through the napkin, which is creating an attachment. When you get to the back of your napkin, if you put painter's tape on there, gingerly remove it and continue the process. Now, like I said, I like to leave a little overhang on mine, right? It just kind of allows a connection point for the two napkins to overlap each other, and I just feel there's a little bit more stability in there. You could absolutely just have them butt right on up. It's entirely up to you. It's a preference, but you see here I'm rub, rub, rub. That is how I do the whole candle when I'm doing this. Well, maybe not that exact rub, but different candles get different rubs. And when I'm all done rubbing, it usually looks like this. To remove the excess napkin around the candle, I bust on out the X-Acto knife. And no, it's not getting an entrance, people. Don't come in my comments. Don't even do it. I just gave the finger sander an entrance. We're taking a break. We got enough people on the roster right now. Anyhow, you can take your X-Acto knife and trim this down however you would like. The way I do it is just kind of drag it around the top, or I'll even press just the knife piece around the top, creating as much of a straight line as I possibly can. Now, this is also up to you. If you feel like you would rather use scissors, you go right ahead and do that. And if you feel like you want to cut your napkin down completely to the size you want it before you decoupage it on here, you can go about that route too. There's so many different ways to do something like this. Well, lots of crafts mostly. It's just what works best for you. Once you're all done with your decorative candles, finish them up however you would like. For these, I decided to keep it nice and simple and grab some twine and just wrap around a couple times, creating a little bow. You could absolutely put a little button on yours. You could absolutely do it with ribbon. You could add some florals, whatever you picked up that amazing thrifted candle for to upcycle it. I really hope this idea inspires you to grab that yucky candle next time you see it and take it home and give it some new life. For this scrapwood tabletop decor piece, we're going to need a piece basically in the shape of a square. And for anybody that needs measurements, here you go. I want to do a napkin decoupage around the outside, so we're going to put a nice white base all around the edges of our wood block. I also painted the back. You can make this reversible if you would want. I chose not to. This napkin I had in my stash was sent to me from a subscriber. I don't know where it came from, but let me show you how amazing it is. Looks like a patch, like little patches. They're different colors, right? Look how cool this is. So we're going to take a section from each one of these and put around the edge of our wood block. We're going to remove all the sneaky layers to our napkin so we can just decoupage that one top layer. But first, we're gonna get a little artsy fartsy and grab some paint colors that match these napkin colors. This way we can create some beautiful stain art inside our grains of wood. I'm gonna be using a round brush for this and alternating out the colors. If you're not familiar with me, I love creating stain art. It's not the easiest craft, but when I get the opportunity to take time to share this amazing way to get artsy, absolutely love to do that. I'm using several different colors here, and I'm just staying inside of the grain, and I'm blending it differently depending on how the water is going in with the colors, and I'm just rotating them out and then fading them, so this way when it's all done you have just a little bit of a 3D appearance. You can use the colors to lighten this or darken this as much as you would like. This was absolutely perfect for me. I spent 2 hours painting this. For anyone wondering how long this took, it took me about 2 hours. Another thing I like to do is to take a sander and go over the whole piece. It really makes it look like that color is inside of the grain. When that was completely dry, I trimmed down that beautiful napkin of ours. So we had strips that fit perfectly over top of the sections that we painted white. For the medium, I'm just going to take some Mod Podge and put on the white sections. And I'm going to use my TDS artist brushes for the application portion. In my opinion, napkins are one of the hardest things to decoupage with, especially if you're a beginner. I learned early on that cling wrap isn't always the best thing to help reduce wrinkles. So instead, I grabbed kitchen sponges. This is just a dry kitchen sponge. I cut them in half. It is not damp. What it does is it allows me to press down directly in the section that I put the Mod Podge and help minimize wrinkles. Now, obviously, use whatever method you would like. Cling wrap doesn't always work out so great for me. And if I'm not worried about wrinkles, this sponge helps minimize them amazingly and still help give me that vintage feel whenever I'm decoupaging onto something without having a ton of issues with my application. Now, while this was drying, it is time to get to the main focus of our piece, which are these beautiful resin castings I ordered from my friend Tracy over at Tracy's Crafty Creations. Now, y'all are gonna have to bear with me a second while I gush over my girl because I absolutely love this woman. She does lives over on Facebook. If you have Facebook and you're not hanging out with her, she does decoupage. She's so creative, and she has an amazing website where you can order rice paper and you can order digital downloads and you can get beautiful resin castings like this so you can create with. No, it's not time for Christmas. Listen, I just wanted this one particular ornament out of here. Look at it. Okay, it's beautiful and it's perfect to add some of this gold gilding wax onto for this. Yes, I bought the whole set just for this one thing. Okay, I'm gonna use those other ones when the time comes. Okay, so prepare yourselves. And people, take this idea and remix it, obviously, for whatever you would like your focal point to be. I love this ornate design and I wanted to create something really unique. I trimmed down all the excess napkin around our piece and then added our ornate centerpiece right to the middle with a little bit of type-ons, quick and thick. I could not be happier with how this piece turned out. Please take these ideas and remix them using whatever tissue paper you would like. This isn't one type of tissue paper fits all. These tips and tricks should work with any type of tissue paper. First thing you should know about working with ceramic is it's extremely porous and a great idea to put a base on this. The base is completely up to you. There's no one size fits all here. You could use a good old multi-surface, a chalk paint, doesn't matter if it's artesian or budget friendly. Gesso works great. Pick a Mod Podge. There's multiple different variations to choose from. You could use an artesian type medium like liquid patina, but today I'm going to be using this beautiful folk art matte varnish. It's non-toxic, and I'll be using that for our medium and our sealer. And for the sake of our demonstration, I'm taking my water bottle and giving our ceramic piece a little spritzy spritz. Now, if this had been glazed over, that's going to drip off of here. And since it's not, we have to put us a base on here because our water is getting sopped right up. If we put our medium one here immediately and then expect to decoupage, our paper is going to be sitting there like, I wish I was sticking, but I'm not. I decided to roll on with the multi-surface. I've been painting on ceramics since I was a child, and the multi-surface for this type of material is just one of my go-tos. Feel free to work with whatever is best for you. Once your piece is dry, if you want to give it a test and see if it's still porous, grab your water bottle, don't be shy, and give it a little spritzy spritz. Your water should pool on the top or start running off the sides like you see mine is here. Dry it on up and you're ready to decoupage. For our application, I'm just going to be using my TDS fan brushes. These are perfect for decoupage. You can absolutely use whatever works best for you. Next, I'm taking that medium and putting it on our applicator, and I'm just doing a small section. I like to do it in sections. If your comfort level makes you feel like you can cover the whole thing and then slop on your decoupage tissue paper, you go to right ahead. This is just how I go about it. I'm then taking my water bottle and doing a little spritz on the back, and it gives us the ability to manipulate that paper and bend it a little bit more. In my opinion, it also helps that medium to kind of soak up into the tissue paper. If you want to use some cling wrap or a brayer at this point to attach your decoupage tissue paper, you go right ahead. I use my fingers most of the time with my tissue paper and my rice paper, usually smooths them out well enough. But if you're very particular with wrinkles, make sure you're using what's best for you to accomplish getting that wrinkle-free look. For the sake of keeping one of the designs on the decoupage tissue paper complete, I cut this short so it does not wrap completely around our ceramic piece. So I figured I would take this opportunity to teach y'all a little trick how to take this idea and create a unique design that will make it look like one whole piece. I'm going to take my homemade texture paste here and put a little bit off to the side and mix it with some green paint. You could obviously leave yours plain if you want. And if you don't want to do texture, you could absolutely use some regular paint. That would work as well. I'm just using texture. I feel like this gives it a little something extra. And if you don't want to make your own, you can absolutely order texture paste off Amazon. And then we're going to take a stencil. I'm just going to cut out a section of one of my TDS stencils, and I'm going to then take some painter's tape and tape it down into sections. So this way it's not moving all over our cylinder as we're trying to apply the texture paste on top. While the video is going to give you the impression that this is super easy and quick, people, it took me about 20 minutes to get this on here so it wasn't bleeding through everything. You could absolutely spray some sticky adhesive on here. It's up to you. Next, I'm taking the same paint that we did on our ceramic piece, and I'm going in all the little sections, covering up where we can see that paper ends and we have just our ceramic piece. When I'm happy with that and that's all dry, I'm going to come back in with like a little, I call these like little baby chippy brushes, and I'm going to do a dry brush all around the whole thing and then put a nice layer of our sealer over top. We're going to upcycle this glass jar into a bird's nest holder. First, we're going to put a base of paint on here. Use whatever you would like. I like using chalk paint mostly for my glass projects. I put 3 coats on here. Normally, I pounce the first layer, but I was out of pouncers, so I had to put 3 layers instead of my normal 2 to get decent coverage. And then I cut out a piece of decoupage tissue paper to size. I'm taking some of that medium and just squirting a bit on the glass, and then I'm just going to spread it out. I like doing this in sections. You can absolutely put it all over your glass piece if you would like. I try to minimize wrinkles by doing a lot of my decoupage in sections if I'm not going to do the iron-on method. This just works best for me. When I was happy with the level of coverage, I then took my decoupage tissue paper and gave it a little spritzy spritz on the back so it was a little bit more manipulatable, and used my hands to rub it on our glass. When I had each section down in place, I just carried on adding more of that medium and spraying the next section of the decoupage tissue paper and pressing it onto our piece. Whenever you're going to end up overlapping decoupage paper on something like this, or tissue paper or napkin, it's always a good idea to make sure that the other side is completely attached before you match it up. Or gingerly, I usually like to have mine gingerly lay over the other seam and then trim it down. Now I know some people like to have it match exactly. That usually never bothers me. I just have that side facing away from anywhere somebody's gonna see it. I decided to take my sponge, and this is a dry kitchen sponge for anyone wondering. It is not wet, it is dry, and press it along the decoupage tissue paper and around the edges. I also, you'll notice, I take my fan brush with a little bit of medium going around the edges as I'm doing this and just kind of alternating. Because we have grooves in this piece, it's helping me just kind of lay it down seamlessly and sopping up any extra medium or water that is just kind of sitting on our piece that might prohibit it from attachment and cause any additional wrinkles. This just real easy, tapping around, pressing, and just laying everything down. To get ready for our bird's nest, I'm just taking some of Dollar Tree's nautical rope and gluing it down around our lid. You obviously can do this whatever way it works best for you. I didn't care that I painted the lid. I didn't plan on removing the lid at all, and I knew I was going to be attaching everything. And then I added some little green pieces that were kind of the same color as we had in our decoupage tissue paper, put them around the top of the lid, and took some of this messy moss with a little bit. Whenever I see bird's nests, I see like twigs sticking out, I see, I don't know, ribbon, who knows, there's stuff sticking out. So I grabbed some of my twine and kind of twirled it around, make it look a little bit more authentic, I think. Grabbed some eggs I had decoupage from last year in my stash, and I just think this turned out so precious and ready for spring. Such a great way to upcycle some glass you have sitting around your home into beautiful DIY home decor. For these outdoor decorative tiles, we're going to use two I picked up from Home Depot and some of my Folk Art outdoor matte varnish. These tiles are super slick, so we're going to put a layer right on the top before we start decoupaging. Now, this stuff does say don't shake it, but I have a tendency not to follow directions, and I shook it up anyway just because I wanted to see what happens. Now, it does get a little bit bubbly, and I was worried that that was going to dry like that, but to my surprise, it didn't. It actually leveled itself out, and it's really, really matte, as you can see here. Now, people, that doesn't mean I recommend you shaking it up and getting wild. Learn from me, okay? I like to push boundaries, you know, protect your project. Turned out for me okay. Anyhow, I cut these two beautiful pieces out from my decoupage tissue paper. Thought they would look amazing outside in my little garden area, my rock garden here. And then I took some more of that medium. If you're asking why I put the first layer on and then do a second layer, it is a preference. I've absolutely just done one layer and attached them. I've done the iron-on method with these. I've done 3 layers. I've used clear matte spray paint. I've done a ton of tiles a ton of different ways. My personal preference is just to use a sealer, whether you use a Mod Podge, whatever, and put a layer over. It knocks the sheen off, okay? And then come in with your second layer that we're going to use as the medium to attach your decoupage tissue paper, your rice paper, your regular paper, whatever you're using on your tiles as your decorative piece, and then attach it. You'll notice here that I'm also using my spray bottle to give the back of these a little spritzy spritz, and then I'm coming in with a sponge and pressing down. I'm just using my fingers here. The sponge is a dry sponge for anyone wondering. It helps to keep the wrinkles down to a minimum, and if your paper is extra wet, it soaks up any water as well as any medium seeping through. Creates an amazingly flawless finish. For this small decorative decoupage cube DIY, we're going to take one of Dollar Tree's cubes and we're going to decoupage all the sides. First up, we're going to take this chalk paint and put a layer on 2 of the ends. We're going to leave the rest completely neutral. With this project, I want to share with you how amazing it is to use a background color for that pop in your decoupage tissue paper, as well as how amazing it is to not have any background color so you can see that wood grain shine through and blend in with your paper. There really is a benefit to both depending on the look you're going for whenever you decoupage, and I thought this cube would be a great way to share that so you could see on one piece the variations. I'm just taking my TDS decoupage tissue paper and I'm pressing it down on the wood blocks in the exact sections that I want to trim, and then just cutting them out. And I did this for each one of the sides. If you go to do this, a little tip is to always leave some overhang, because you can always trim some off, but you can't get some back if you trim it too short. So little tip, you're welcome. I then took my medium and put a layer on each section and a little bit of water and sprayed the back of our tissue paper, used my fingers and gingerly placed them down in each section. Another tip for decoupaging on wood without a base is to make sure that whether you're decoupaging with a napkin, tissue paper, rice paper, it's a good idea that the paper itself has a hue that will blend with the wood grain. Something that is brown, something that is yellow, cream, white even. If you take something with a teal color, let's say, or a blue color, let's say, it might be hard to blend that in, having those wood grains pop through. But you'll notice here that as this dries, you'll be able to see how the wood grain blends in really well with the bird design and the floral design, and how the top design that has the little geometric piece on there and the floral piece, it really pops out. Those colors in the tissue paper shine through very noticeably, while the background with the wood grains and the bird stands out, making it look like it's all blended in. I absolutely love giving you creative ideas to turn books into beautiful pieces of decor, but sometimes y'all give me some slack about it. Even though I have shared that over 300 million books get tossed into our landfills each year. So upcycling them, crafters, is actually help save our environment. With all that being said, I aim to please and I love giving y'all options. So we're gonna take this piece of wood and turn it into a beautiful piece of book decor. fake book decor that is. We're going to start off by needing a piece of decorative trim for our spine, and I popped over Home Depot, I say Depot, you guys call it whatever you want. In this little section here, you can get little decorative pieces of trim, and they're really inexpensive. So I'm going to take a piece and just chop it down to size, and to do that, we're going to need to bring on in the miter shears. I mean, really, use whatever you would like to cut yours down. This is what I'm going to use. We're also going to be using a wood applique. You can pick these up off Amazon. You can pick them up at Lowe's, Home Depot, Hobby Lobby. These in particular on my website. And I'm just going to cut it down into little sections. So I get 3 pieces to be able to put on our faux book. And if you don't want to use a wood applique, you can use molds, whatever you would like. Take the idea and remix it. To attach all of our pieces, I'm going to be using Tip-Ons Quick and Thick. Feel free to use whatever you would like. On wood, I usually like to use either tacky glue or wood glue, or this is like my new go-to stuff. A smear just a little bit all over our wood pieces and then put them into place on the spine of our book. Now for the front of our book, we're going to create a little frame using a piece of rice paper. Use whatever you would like for this idea. I'm going to take this little steampunk piece, inspired me a bit. I've been wanting to use this. I truly love every little design on this sheet of my TDS rice paper, but I wanted to use this balloon one. Now I had another piece of trim from Home Depot, and I'm just going to cut that down, making 45-degree cuts. So this way it all fits together perfectly around that top wood applique piece. If you don't want to frame your piece like this, use molds, use whatever works best for you. Now we have to create that background for a decoupage piece, so I'm just going to take a little bit of white chalk paint and set a base down. And for our main color, I'm just going to take some black chalk paint and cover the entire rest of our book. Once I had the parts of the book painted that I wanted, I allowed this to dry and then came on in with my TDS artist brushes. These are in the fan style. They are perfect for decoupage, and I'm going to use them to apply this rice paper in the section where we painted that white paint. This allows our design to pop, and it also helps us to be able to create different colors. How we have the black, you could absolutely paint this whatever color you want, but the white behind whatever you're decoupaging really allows for the design and your napkin, your tissue paper, whatever, to really show through. Now this rice paper works really well if you spritz a little water on the back after you've added your medium on there. Helps reduce your wrinkles. Works so well just to take my fingers and flatten it right out. While that little section was drying, I grabbed my Faux Art metallic paints and applied a layer on top of our trim pieces and did a little dusting over the spine of our book. I added some of my Tip-On Quick and Thick to the back of these little trim pieces and then applied them around our piece for our frame. I decided to grab some spackling and put right in the corners, so this way we didn't have such gaps where the frame didn't exactly meet. This didn't take very long to dry, and when it did, I grabbed my little finger sander and just took that excess off and then painted up the trim. At this point, the trimmings are entirely up to you. To mimic book pages, I took some antique Waverly wax and carefully colored that in, trimmed everything up so it looked really nice. did a light dusting with our black paint around the frame, and then I added some gears.